Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy here, Manny, once again. Welcome back to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NFL, NBA, and MLB. And before I continue on with the video, like always, guys, I would appreciate a like on the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe down below and do not forget to turn on those notifications. This way you do not miss any of my new uploads. With that being said, today is Sunday, May the 13th, 2018. And we have a one-game slate on Fanduel. Nice little GPP play here, guys. I mean, as you know, I'm a GPP player. Love to do them as much as possible. I'm not too fond of, like I said before in my videos regarding this 5-player, but I kind of like this little structure they did for today with the MVP being 2 times the points. And then they got a star at 1.5 times the points and pro at 1.2 times the points. And so the difference is now they're not requesting you or requiring you to have a guard or forward or a center. You can choose any 5 players and put them on where you think they're going to give you the best possible chance to gain these points. So I kind of like this structure, so we'll see how it works out. But before I move on, let me just go over a couple of things regarding the actual matchups. Boston and Cleveland have played each other 3 times this year, and Cleveland took 2 out of the 3 games. They were 1-1 in Boston, winning 1 and losing 1. During the course of these playoffs, Boston has been averaging 104 points per game, Cleveland 103, so they're very close there. Field goal percentage, Cleveland is a little bit ahead of Boston, 46.7% shooting from the floor, while Boston is at 44.6%. 3-point shooting, Boston is slightly ahead by 1 percentage point, 36% from 3-point range, while Cleveland 35%. Rebounding is Boston is at 42 rebounds per game, Cleveland is averaging 38 per game, and then turnover ratio, both teams are deadlocked. They both have done fairly well during the course of the playoffs as far as turnovers are concerned, both averaging 12 per game. We have some good spots for some guys. Best spots I think for Boston, in my opinion, are guys like Tatum, Horford, Baines, and Mr. Morris, simply because Cleveland during the course of the year, even though statistically during the 3 games they have played, none of these guys have really had mind-boggling offensive games, but that can change because it is the playoffs. But Tatum, Horford, and Baines and Morris are definitely a nice little front court there that gave some trouble to Indiana and as well as to Toronto. So I think they're going to come in battle. That's going to be a tough spot for Cleveland here. So one of these guys more than likely is going to have, in my opinion, big games throughout this series. Best spots obviously for the Cleveland team. When I look at both teams, in my opinion, I just see more offensive players coming out of Boston as opposed to Cleveland. Like if you're focusing on, let's say, 20 or 25 fantasy points or better, I can very easily tell you right now that these guys like Rozier, Brown, Smart, Tatum, Horford, and just those 5 or 6 right there are capable on any given night giving you 25 plus. Whereas offensively for Cleveland, to me, obviously James can give you a 60 plus upside every single game out, and Love has the potential to give you 40 or better. But those are the 2 most explosive guys for Cleveland. Other than that, I don't see anybody else who could probably get you 25 or better every single game, unless Carver and Mr. Smith are hot, and sometimes they're just up and down. So in my opinion, I think offensively, if you wanted to focus on any particular offense from either one of these 2 teams in this particular matchup, I think it's a little more balanced out and a little bit better with Boston. You can get a little bit of fantasy points pretty much from every position, and some guys are pretty solid, like guys like Horford has been very consistent throughout the playoffs and consistent all year long. So Steady Al would be a good pick here within this particular GPP. But overall, yeah, I think those are the best spots among guys. Let's go over to the cruncher and let's take a look at some of these guys a little bit further. We go to point guard, and let's go right to the point guard position. We got Rozier and we got Hill. I am not, obviously favoring anybody else. Larkin may get some time on the floor. I don't expect him to get too much in game 1 unless Rozier gets hurt, God forbid, or is having a lousy game, or it ends up being a blowout, which I don't believe it will be. But Mr. Rozier, has done, okay thus far. During the course of the playoffs, he's been doing very, very well. He is here valued at 8,500 for tomorrow's game. So you really need about, wow, you need about 30, you need 43 from him, and that's pretty high. His price for at least game one. He's averaging 37 in these playoffs, and against Cleveland in the 3 games, which I'll click on here. As you can see, he was in the green in all 3 of those games he played against Cleveland. So he did very well against Cleveland. This is definitely a good matchup for him to have big games. He averaged 32 during the course of these 3 games here. You know, I like Rozier. He's definitely going to be in some of these lineups. He's obviously one of the offensive guys that has tremendous upside. As we know, he's explosive. He can put up 50 plus. So definitely he should be in some of your lineups. If not, maybe one of your core guys. Definitely if you're stacking Boston guys in this 5-player GPP, I would definitely recommend, and I think he's going to be fairly chalky, at least 50% or better. Terry Rozier, you definitely should play him. When we go over to George Hill for Cleveland, he's not a bad play either in this particular GPP. I am not too fond of him, but against Boston, he has had 2 games during the course of this season. He put 14 and 15, really were in the red on both games. But in the playoffs, the last 2 out of the last 3 games, he's actually put 19 plus up there, and he's getting a far more amount of minutes on the floor now during the playoffs as he did, as opposed to when he played during the course of the season against them. So, I think it's not a bad play. 47, it's 4,700 is his price, so you need to get 23, almost 24 from him. Is going to be very close. They're projecting him to only put up 20, so he's actually his price is actually a little too pricey, if you ask me. He probably should be more in the 4,200 or 4,500, but he's priced at 4,700. I think he has definitely a chance to get to value. I wouldn't say he is someone that you necessarily need from the Cleveland Cavaliers in this particular slate. Let's go to shooting guard. We have here Mr. Jaylen Brown, of course, Mr. Marcus Smart. You got Carver, Smith. Now, this is going to be an interesting category here because I think this is an area where I think Cleveland were preparing themselves when they made these moves for Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson. I think one of these 2 guys may get some time on the floor tomorrow, and if they do very well, they're going to stay on the floor because they both did fairly well against Boston this season when they lined up against them. But let's start off with Mr. Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, 35, 13, and 33 over the last 3 games. He had, let's see here, Mr. Jaylen, he averaged 24, he's averaging 25, during the course of these playoffs. Against Cleveland, he's averaging 20. He had a 34 and a 29 spot. Okay. He had a 35 and a 34 spot, in 2 out of those 3 games during the season against Cleveland. His price is at 67, so you need to get about, I would say you need 33, 67. Yeah, you beat him. You're going to need about 33 from him to make value, but at 67, and obviously he is capable of putting that up. As you can see, he put 33 2 games ago and then put 35 just before in the final game against Philly. As long as he gets his shots and he gets his floor time, I mean, he had 31 and 29 in those 2 respectable games. If he get 29 or better in this particular game, I think he can definitely get you there. And of course, he is capable of getting you 40 plus. So there's a little upside to him, and not an overwhelming upside, but definitely not bad. For 6,700, I may want to go cheaper and go with Marcus Smart, who I think is playing better than Jaylen Brown at the moment. Marcus Smart has had a 37, 33, 19, 35, 20. As you can see, 4 out of his last 5 during the course of the playoffs, he hit value. His minutes are at least 31 or better over the course of those 5 or 6 games. His usage rate has been great. And then, of course, he's getting sufficient shots, 8, 12, 11, 13, and 12 over the course of that time frame. And he's getting a couple of threes up there as well. He's getting to the foul line as he did here in the last game. He does a little bit of everything. So at 5,400, you need 25, 27 maybe from Marcus Smart. You need 27, and he's averaging more than that. He's averaging actually 27 through the course of these playoffs. But as you can see in the last 2 games, he's averaging within the last 3 out of his last 4 games, he's averaging 33 plus. So I really like him as a fine play here at this price. I think he is definitely cheap here, and they project him to put up about 28, 29, but I think he's going to get 30 or more. I really think he's definitely going to be in some of my lineups, and I definitely recommend he should be in some of yours. We go down here, and now we look at the Cleveland guys. Carver and Smith, you know, they're in good spots too. 4.3 and 4.5 price range. You definitely need about 21, 22 from each one of these guys. We know that Smith can get you there, and Carver when they're hot. But I kind of like Jordan Clarkson here. He had 3 games against Cleveland this year. Against Boston this year. 2 of them were when he was with Los Angeles Lakers. This last game here on February 11th, he was with Cleveland already, and he played 23 minutes, shot 7-11 from the floor, 3 of 4 from three-point range. He had 2 steals. He had a fine game, 17 points. He put up a 28 spot. And then the 2 games when he played against Boston, while he was a member of the Lakers, he put a 38 and a 30 spot in those games, 34 and 27 minutes respectively. And look at the shots, 8 of 17, 7 of 13. If he can get that kind of shot opportunities, he may be able to do some damage, and especially at this price, 3,800, I think he is the finest value play going into tomorrow. Well, I mean, in this particular slate, he's not 38. He is 65, but that's still the lower end here, 65. So I kind of like him there at that price range. I think he'll be an excellent play, especially if Cleveland, and I believe Cleveland prepared themselves for this. They wanted to have these extra shooting guards against Boston because they know Boston's shooting guards are pretty tough. Jaylen Brown is a fine defender. Marcus Smart is even a better defender. So they need these slashy, fast guys, Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson, just in case Smith and Carver don't pan out. So I think they're going to utilize these guys. We'll wait and see if that is the case. But I think these guys are going to be in prime position here to make something happen. So I like Jordan Clarkson. Rodney Hood is definitely another possibility. As you can see, he hasn't get a whole lot of time, but against Boston this year, he put a 23 and 28. This was as a member. This was actually that last game against Boston as a Cleveland Cavalier, and this one, I guess, is definitely when he was still with Utah. But so I like Rodney Hood and Clarkson here, but I am more in favor of Jordan Clarkson. So I think he may be a very sneaky value play in this particular slate. Small forward, LeBron James, obviously he's the man. He's definitely someone you should definitely consider. We know he has 75 to 80 fantasy point upside. They project him to put up 53. He's been averaging, what I got here for James, he's averaging 59 during the course of the playoffs. And in 3 games against Boston this year, which we'll take a look right now, I have him that he averaged 51 in those 3 games. As you can see, a 52, 38, and a 63, and that was a total of 51. So I mean, he's the man. He's been doing it all over the course of the playoffs. He actually has won 2 or 3 games for these guys late with late game shots that went in. I like LeBron here. You're gonna have to play him here in this 20. He's gonna be worth $20,000, but I mean, you got to put him either in the MVP or the star spot and gain those additional points with him being there. We know he's going to get time on the floor. We know he's going to get shots. So he's definitely someone that you want to pay for here. He's going to be chalky, but you know what? You'd rather have him and then just build around him during the course of the other 4 players. Jason Tatum, Boston here, good spot too. 35-30, 35-30. I mean, his numbers have been great. What I have him here, he's been averaging 32 throughout the playoffs. He needs about 36 to meet value here, so he's very close to value here. I think he could definitely, I mean, considering that Cleveland has had issues with small forwards and power forwards this year, but surprisingly didn't have that issue with Mr. Tatum or with Mr. Horford or any of these guys, as we'll see in a moment. But I believe this was earlier in the year. I think circumstances are different now. This kid is playing a whole lot better now than he was playing. Obviously, when he last played Cleveland was February 11th. We're talking about 3.5 months ago or so. So, I mean, Jason Tatum, I think, is a fine play here today. At 35, they're projecting him to put 35. He needs 36, so it's very, very close. I think he has the potential to put 40 plus in this game. I definitely will like him in some of my lineups, especially when I stack up Boston players. You definitely should consider him. Power forward, Kevin Love, Marcus Morris, and Jeff Green are the only three here that I would think would be in play. Kevin Love obviously has been doing well as of late. There was a time there, as you can see, he was struggling big time, but he's found his mojo quite a bit in the last 3 games against Toronto. 52, 48, and 40. I love those numbers. I love the minutes. I love the usage rate, and obviously I love the shots he's been taking. He's hitting at least 50% or better in the last few games, so he's doing very, very well there. He's doing all the other stuff that he does too. The rebounding is there, not so quite so in the last game, but the prior 2 or 3, he definitely was the Kevin Love of old. I like him here as well. I mean, in this particular slate, they have him at 13,000. So he definitely should be in the MVP or star spot and gain those extra points. I think he is the second stud that Cleveland has in this particular game. You know, as like I mentioned before, the best spot guys are James and Love because they're the best offensive guys. They're the guys that can put the biggest numbers and be at least as consistent. Now that Love has found his groove back, we'll see how he does against Boston's defense. But if he plays at the caliber that he's capable of playing and he really steps it up even more so here, he could definitely be the main factor here, you know, for Cleveland over this Boston team, which is going to be very, very tough defensively. These kids, they play very, very hard. We go over here next. We have Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris, let's see what we got here for Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris is averaging 24 over the course of the last 4 games. As you can see here, 3 out of the last 4 games he's met value. He's getting sufficient minutes, 25, 34, 35, 28. His shots, he's getting quite a bit. He's not shooting well. If he can shoot at a higher percentage rate, he'll definitely do very well. He would have had bigger numbers here if he would have hit a few more of these shots. At 5,500, you need about 27 from him. And you know what? He's been averaging 24 in the last 3 or 4 games. In the 2 games against Cleveland, he put up a 20 spot. Let's see here, a 20 spot and a 14, pretty much almost a 15 and a 21. That was a while back. Really in the red, didn't meet value in those 2 games, but I think he needs to step it up here. I think the whole Boston team knows that, and like I said before, statistically during the course of the year, Cleveland did have their issues with the bigger guys. So this is a chance for them to really step up, and I expect them to. Marcus Morris will be in some of the lineups as well, guys. Jeff Green will probably be the only one. I mean, Larry Nance should see some action here as well, but I just feel that Jeff Green and Kevin Love are going to get the primary amount of minutes for the Cavaliers coming off, going on the floor. Love will start, and he probably will start at center, and then you figure Jeff Green will get a lot of reps on the 4 spot. 14, 19, 22, and 30. He definitely had his best 2 games against Toronto in game 1 and 2. He shot the ball fairly well there as well. He's at 4,700. I think it's a little pricey. I think the better deal would be going all the way to Mr. Jordan Clarkson at 38 if I wanted to choose one of those guys coming off the bench for Cleveland. But I mean, he can get you there too. I think Morris would definitely be in some of the lineups. I kind of like the other Celtics more for this particular slate of 5 players. I kind of like the Horfords and even the Baines a little bit more than I like Morris. But Morris could definitely be a very sneaky play and very important factor during the course of this series. Let's go over to center. At center, we got Horford, Baines, and I'm not going to be on Tristan Thompson. I think he's going to get some minutes here because, you know, they're gonna have to battle a little bit. Baines is a really, really physical guy. Horford is not as physical, but he's been getting into paint and working his butt off there in the last few games. He's better. He's more better offensive shooting center. Likes hitting the threes. Like being on the wing a lot, and definitely shooting from 15 foot or better. So I think Horford is a fine. But what I like about Horford is that he's steady. We keep selling a steady out. This guy will get you 35 plus every single night. He's averaging, what we got here for Mr. Horford. He's averaging 37.6 points during the course of the fantasy points during the course of the playoffs. He needs 37 to cover this value, so he definitely can get you there. I don't mind paying 7,600 for Al Horford. In this case, I keep saying 76, but in the actual GPP, he is 13,000. So you just got to pay it. He's going to be one of the offensive guys, definitely for Boston. Between him, Rozier, Smart and Tatum. I think those four guys definitely gonna put it together, and even Mr. Brown. So if those five guys could get you 25 plus, you're gonna be okay. And Boston will probably be in a position to win these games and this series. But Al Horford is definitely in play here, guys. Definitely in play. He's a fine play. At center, he's very steady. Baines, I've been liking all his physical attributes he brings. 28, 19, and 23 over the last 3 games. He needs about 22 to cover this price at 4,400. I think he could definitely get you there. He has played against Cleveland, not a whole lot. As you can see, 13, 16, 19 minutes. So we can't even go back to that and look at that as any reason for us not to take him or to take him. I think we have to just go by the way he's been playing as of late in the playoffs. He's getting 19 plus minutes, and he's definitely getting usage, and he's definitely playing and playing hard. I really like him here at 4,400. I think he can get you 22 plus. He could get you 25 plus, I believe, and yeah, he'll definitely be in some of these lineups. He's going to only cost you 6,500, I think, if I saw earlier. Where is he at? Baines. Yeah, 6,500 to get him on your lineup. So definitely a sneaky play. I like him there at that price, and I like Jordan Clarkson. So let's just go. Now that we've gone over a few of the players, let's just throw in a couple of lineups here real quick. Obviously, let's start with a lineup. Let's start with a. I'm going to start with a Cleveland stack. All right. Again, tips. Very simple. 5-game slate, as 1-game slate like this, and you got to choose 5 players. Obviously, you want to be as different as you can be, but you know that you're going to need at least 2 or 3, offensive weapons here that definitely consistently put up points and put up fantasy points, and they are, a very important piece to each team's offensive weapons. So, I mean, like I said before, Boston, to me, has more of the offensive weapons when you consider Rozier can get you 25 or better, even 30 or better any given night. You figure the same for Brown. You figure the same for Mr. Smart. Tatum is averaging 32 over the course of the playoffs, and Horford, close to 35, 36 during the course of the playoffs. So these are the guys that you definitely need to put in this lineup, and then you're going to have to focus on maybe getting 1 or 2 of those bottom of the barrel guys that may come in and may be a big surprise. So when you look at Cleveland, I already see right off the top, my first 2 thoughts are James and Love, and I think that's what's going to come down to. If you ask 9, 10 people, I think 9 out of 10 or maybe all 10 are going to say, yeah, when I think of Cleveland, I think the 2 offensive weapons they got that could really light it up is going to be James and Love. All right, so this, if you do a Cleveland stack, you definitely want to bring in James and Love. So let's go James as your MVP at 2 times the points, and let's go star, we'll go Kevin Love. Now we got 9,000 apiece for a pro and 2 utilities. We could go with a Boston guy here if we wanted to, and I say 9. The first guy that comes to mind here at close to this price that I would consider, if I'm going to go with a Boston guy, I may go with Smart, who's been really steady and been consistent as of late, or you can just hope that Jaylen Brown has a monster game, but we'll throw in Jaylen Brown there. Then we go utility. We got 8,700. Definitely, like I said before, you want to go down here, choose either Baines or Mr. Clarkson. I think they're going to get some time, or you can go all the way to 8 and get Jeff Green, which he's going to get some floor time. You could go all the way up, to Carver and Smith. One of these guys are going to start. Maybe both of them are going to start. So I don't know what the actual lineup is going to be tomorrow, but one of these 2 guys could be starting. So I would say let's go utility 8,750. I'm gonna go with the low end. I really love Clarkson here, so they go Clarkson. Now you got 11K. You can go and max that out. You won't be able to max it out, which is good. All right, because remember, that's one of the key things you got to remember. If you're able to utilize all your money, chances are, there's a whole slew of other people, thousands maybe, that have that same lineup. So you really want to mix it up and be different. If you leave money on the table, not even a problem. If anything, that's probably even best in a slate like this, or even in a 2-game slate. It's the same thing. At any slate, to be totally honest with you, I've seen people win, having 1,000 and change left over on a after hours event or even on a main event. So it definitely does happen. It just got to be different. So utility here, I would say with 11,000, we can go with Marcus Morris and hope he has a big game, or we can just drop down and try to get Carver, Smith, or George Hill here. We have already 2 Cleveland, 3 Cleveland, 1 Boston. I would say let's just throw in. So you can have a lineup like that. You can throw in and leave. You have 1,000 left on the table. You can mix and match if you want. But you got Love, James, Brown, Clarkson, and Morris. All right. If you wanted to go right route. If you wanted to only just do James and then light it up with a couple of Boston Celtics, I would go Rozier for sure. And here I will go definitely Horford. No, that's too high. So we can't go Horford. Let's go Marcus Smart. Let's go Tatum for a moment. At least he was 65 at utility. And you go with 265s, you can go right there. You're going to pay off completely, but you can get at 6,500. I know I can get Nance, Clarkson, or Baines. I'll go Clarkson and Baines. And then you're right there, you're tapped out, but you got yourself a lineup that chances are Clarkson or Baines are going to be very low owned. Okay, as opposed to Tatum, Rozier, and James. And like I said before, you just got to be different. So I could be tapped out here, but this may be a lineup that a lot of people may not want to do. You know, so I mean, it's something to consider there. All right, now let's go and do a Boston stack. Let's try Boston here. We definitely need Rozier, and we definitely need Horford. I think those are the 2 key guys. Then after that, you could go Tatum, and now you still got 10, and you can go to Jaylen Brown, and you got 4 nice offensive weapons there with those Bostons, with a Boston stack there with Rozier, Horford, Tatum, and Brown. And then your last utility guy, obviously you're gonna need a Cleveland guy. There goes 10,005 for a Cleveland player. You can go Carver. You have so many options here. You can go Carver, Smith, or Hill. You can go down to Green, or you can go down even cheaper and go Clarkson. All right, those are the options you have there. You can't do completely all Boston. You definitely need 1 Cleveland. So I would say Carver or Smith. I mean, we could throw in there Smith right now just for you to see it on the screen. But like I said here, you could go Smith, your choice. You can go Smith, you can go Carver, you can go George Hill, or you can go Jeff Green, or you can go all the way down and choose even Jordan Clarkson. And any one of those would be fine. So that's another possible lineup. Then you can go just 3, and let's leave the utilities for Cleveland. We got 10. We got 3 Boston guys there. Let's get 2 Cleveland. We'll definitely get Clarkson. And now you got 13.5. Could that get you Love? Look at that. Bam. All right. And you can mix this up. You can change and put Love up here and move Clarkson down or move Horford down. We know Horford is pretty steady, but Kevin Love has more upside. So I would rather probably put Love here and then move Mr. Horford as a utility. But Horford is definitely in play. If you're going to take Boston players, you definitely want to have at least a steady dose of Mr. Al Horford. All right. And you can actually not even go with Horford. But there goes another lineup there for you guys. Or you can take that off. Leave Rozier. Don't go with Horford at all. You can go Tatum. You can go Marcus Smart. And then go and take 2 Cleveland. You can go with Mr. Love. And then you can come down here at 8,500. You got George Hill. All right. So you got a 3 Boston, 2 Cleveland. I mean, you guys get the idea. You're going to have to. I'm going to put what I could advise is everybody is leave some money on the table. If you utilize all the money, no problem. Make sure that it's totally different. That you have 1 or 2 or maybe even possibly 3 players in that lineup that are more than likely going to be low owned. All right. A low owned meaning guys like, for instance, even a Tristan Thompson may get some time. I don't think I'm going to play him, but you can make a lineup with Tristan in there and hope that he does get 15, 20 minutes and he lights it up. He's going to be very low owned. Jeff Green is going to be low owned, but maybe not severely. Larry Nance will be low or more lower owned than Green. Clarkson, I think, will be lower owned than Green. Baines may be just as much as Clarkson. So these, to me, are going to be very low owned guys. And maybe even Jeff Green will be too, and as well as George Hill. I think Smith and Carver will be in the higher 30s, maybe even possibly 40% owned in some lineups. Lower end for Boston is definitely Mr. Baines. Other than Baines, I think that's basically it. Everybody else should be at least 25% owned or better, from Mr. Brown all the way through Smart, Tatum, Horford, and Rozier, with Rozier more than likely being the highly owned Boston Celtic, and we know that the highest owned Cleveland Cavalier is going to be Mr. James. And I think that's basically it, guys. I mean, I gave you a couple of lineups there to think about. I think that's the way to go. Definitely mix it up. If you have some money to spend on this particular slate, I would say definitely have a Boston stack, maybe two. Have a Cleveland stack or two, and then try to make 2 or 3 lineups where you have either 3 Cleveland, 3 Boston, vice versa, 3-2, 3-2, or or even going. I think you definitely got to go 3-2, 3-2 a few times, and I think you definitely should try a full 4-1 stack. Like I said before, 4 Boston or 4 Cleveland players. During the course of this thing. And then the most important thing also is leave some money on the table. Don't be afraid to leave money in the bank. You don't have to utilize all the money. All right, that's very, very important. You don't have to utilize all the money. I'm definitely going to mix it up, but I think Boston at home with 5 or 6 offensive weapon guys that can put 25 fantasy points or better up, I think that the bulk of your play, at least in my opinion, should come out of your Boston players. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. For me, I'm going to probably be playing more lineups with more Boston players than I am from Cleveland. But like I said, the very sneaky play for Cleveland to me is going to be Jordan Clarkson or Rodney Hood, and I favor Clarkson a little bit more. He was a little more explosive. He definitely was more explosive and put up more offensive points during the course of the season against Boston. So maybe that's one of the reasons why Cleveland picked this young man up, because they figured this kid may be able to help them if they had to face Boston in the playoffs, and now they do. And the same thing with Hood. So, and even Nance. So you never know, even Nance may get in there. But that's, again, this is just my opinion, my mindset, my thinking behind it. But it should be interesting. This should be a nice series. Basically, I think Boston has a good chance to win the series. Obviously, they have more games at home than Cleveland does. Cleveland's been playing fantastic, playing out of their mind. Guys have definitely stepped up. LeBron has definitely stepped up even more so than anybody else on the team. He's pretty much carried the team, but he makes everybody else so much better at times that it's just crazy, So, but Boston, I mean, surprisingly, man, with no Kyrie Irving, they didn't have Marcus Smart throughout the whole playoffs entirely. They didn't have Jalen, Mr. Brown for half of the playoff games, and and they didn't have Hayward all year long. I mean, you can imagine with Kyrie and Hayward on this team, and then you got all these other guys that are contributing right now. I mean, with Tatum, and I mean, it's been phenomenal. I mean, Boston has definitely been very impressive. So we'll see what happens, man. I think this series can go 6 games to 7 easily. I don't see anybody really sweeping anyone here. I think Cleveland's going to be tough. I think Boston's going to be tough. I just still feel that Boston has a little bit more weapons, just like Philadelphia had as well, but against Boston, and they didn't quite did that. But Boston has some good weapons here that are going to be dangerous and very tough for Cleveland. And like I said before, if the small forwards and the power forwards for Boston can step up, if the Baines coming in off the bench can do work, if Horford can do his part, and especially Tatum, who's been playing really out of his mind during the course of this playoffs, which is a lot different from the same Tatum that they saw back in February, Cleveland's going to have some issues, as well as they should, because they definitely have trouble with the big men. So Mr. Morris and Mr. Tatum definitely got to step it up. If they do that, they're gonna win the series. And we'll see someone else in the championship this year. And that's basically it, guys. So hey, drop a like on the video. If you haven't subscribed as of yet, please subscribe down below. It's right in the right-hand corner of your screen. I made it a lot easier for you guys. And on top of that, I mean, anything you want to comment, you want to, ask me any questions, you can. And other than that, I mean, man, it's just, let's enjoy the game. It's going to be a great game. It sucks that it's not 2 games anymore, like 1 game behind the other. I just love NBA so much that I'm willing to watch 2 games back to back. And unfortunately, we just, now that's it. We're down to the final 4 teams. So we're going to see these, GPPs the way they are right now. But $100,000 is up for grabs. If you be a little different, you may be able to pull it out, guys. I'm gonna do my part to try it. And anything that if I put up some serious numbers, I'll definitely share with you guys tomorrow what my positions were. If I cashed anything, obviously it'll be in my Instagram account, but I will share that with you as well. And other than that, man, again, enjoy the games. God bless. And your boy Manny is out, and I speak to you guys tomorrow.